Right, ready? Yes, sir. Okay. Well, thanks you guys for meeting again. Understand after the holidays and trying to accommodate afternoons and stuff. So folks can be in our classrooms can be difficult sometimes. So it's appreciated that we were able to do it this evening. So to start off, just a couple of things. Had a few questions, if we can kind of go through those first, and then we'll go through our proposals, because I wanted to make sure that we understood some of the nuances of how the budget works. So can you please tell us, in terms of some of the information that was shared regarding the Title I and the IDA budgets, where they have classroom teachers, where did those show up within the actual budget? What line item do they show up in budget? Because there is, I don't know if you have this part, but this is the 22-23 Title I and IDA document that says that there's 4.4 and 4.2. Well, $4.2 million of the 4.4 million was used for classroom teachers last year. So I'm just trying to understand where that is in the budget that the school board sees.
Yeah, it is. It's in the federal grants fund, 4,200.
4,200. Okay. So back to the email that Brett had kind of shared. When it discusses that for 23-24, that there were staffing plan with other functions, 177 positions, that those positions are in these different budgets.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a question for us right to this, or just having to give you time to?
I'm giving time to take a look at it and make sure that we understand a little bit more of the process that takes place and where positions are. I know we've been trying to work together or understand past practices of using averages and not necessarily being able to delineate between what's instructional bargaining unit funding and what's support staff funding and all these different things. And so in doing so, we're just trying to understand that based off of what the staffing plan was, and if you apply the $68,000, which is the average teacher salary right now being used with benefits, from what we've discussed, and you multiply that out and apply to the instructional line item, that there's quite a bit of extra funding that's in there. And so we're just trying to understand what those additional pieces are and whether or not that instructional unit is much like the Title I and the IDA, where there's about 15% that rolls over every year. Like for Title I, it's 15%, just about. I think it's 2.6 million. For the IDA, it was 1.3 million. So of that total amount that's in the 5,000 function, I guess we're just trying to understand your proposals coming out of just the 5,000 or out of the 5,000 and the, I think it was 4,000 what you said, Kathy, if I remember correctly.
I'm confused on the question.
So the proposal that was provided to us that gave a total amount, that total amount for that proposal, is it coming out of the 5,000 function?
It has nothing to do with the function. I'm not following the question.
Sure.
Do you understand the question?
Well, instructional staff positions being in the 5,000 and other positions being in other ones, we're trying to figure out what portion of the dollars are going to instructional staff salaries. It's always been what we've been trying to understand. How much does it cost for instructional staff? Right? What was instructional staff originally funded at? If you apply what the original staffing plan is based off of what your proposal was and what's actually in Skyward, we're down positions. And so it from our perspective, it costs less than what you guys have costed it out as. Because there's less people. And it comes out of different functions. It's not just 5,000, it's other different functions, some that are supplied by Title I budgets and other budgets. And that's the reason why when we sat down for the staffing plan meeting, the idea was, what is it that is of the general fund that is the cost of the staffing plan? And therefore, as we had argued before, the grants take care of those other positions because it's part of those positions. It's part of the grant. Those positions are tied up in those. So, like I said, we're just trying to understand. From our perspective, your proposal is a little high because not all the positions are filled. So we'll go to our proposal.
Yeah,
And we'll-
what I would say is give us an opportunity. We'll after you do your proposal,
Mhm.
we'll try and dig into your question and try and respond to you in the most specific way we can. I don't want to just blurt out an answer because I want to make sure that it's very clear and that there's no confusing message related to how we're doing this budgeting and the numbers that we're using to project out what it will cost.
Right. Okay. And I know what happens sometimes. You start to ask questions and then it's the assumption, but there always seems to be the assumption of something. There's no assumption. We're just trying to really nail down what is the cost of the bargaining unit.
Sure.
Where is it located? What portion of a function is it? So that we have a better idea of how it kind of
And I think
plays
that
out.
what we're trying to do is be very thoughtful in the way we respond so that we don't further confuse the situation. It's like going back to our original meeting on the staffing plan. We all thought we were on the same page, but we were saying one thing and you guys were hearing a different thing, or vice versa. We weren't on the same page. So I want to make sure that, we put together a response that's going to, try to address your question as comprehensively as possible.
Okay, well, appreciate it. You ready? Okay. Go ahead, John. Got on this side. But you may need to, whatever the extras for some folks over here. Whatever.
I'm saying if there's fewer teachers, we teach more money. Teachers that are currently employed and the teachers that we staff.
It's actually less. They never give us the number for how much. It's left.
No, I know.
So that's, so maybe just more, we have more positions to fill. That's all.
All right, thank you. So in this proposal, what we've done is we use the actual, went into Skyward, used exactly where people were, what their extra hours were. So if someone was 8.5, someone was 8 hours, made sure that we got an idea of where these folks were. And then applied 3.5% going across. So you'll see down at the bottom, it has also the information dealing with the highly effective annual contract, grandfather, highly effective and effective. And gives a total sum prior to any of the FRS FICA of about $4 million. And when you work your way down and you apply that, it's 4.9. And then the parental leave on top of that, but that parental leave really isn't an accurate number because you were going to get us how many people actually qualified for parental leave based off of the language. Do you guys happen to have a number for that one?
We do not, we don't have the ability to go back and backtrack it all at this point in time. 30, we knew that there was 35 individuals that actually from the teacher unit that actually took maternity leave last year and the year before. It's 35 and 36. So I guess 35.5 is the actual number. But and then we estimated the number of male counterparts that would participate based on the percentage of teachers that we have that are male in order to get the total number. So that's the answer to your question.
Well, I think you had said the last time that the 535,000 was the total cost of what it was last year if everyone was eligible.
Correct.
So, based on how the language is written, I imagine it's a fraction of the people that actually took parental leave or had a leave of absence for that purpose. And so it's kind of hard to negotiate with that, like a little bit more understanding of what potential cost would be. That's why we just used your number.
Well, I mean, I think, and you're right, the $535,000 at this point in time would be paying for all of the individuals that qualified plus the 20% portion of males. And so as I sort of acquiesced to last time, the 535,000 is the highest number. As you applied those parameters, the number would go down.
So potentially costing less.
Potentially
Gotcha.
less.
Okay. So we start with this. And then in addition to that,
All right, can I ask a question?
yes, sir.
So the third column, and this is just for clarity.
Sure.
How did you guys get to that number?
Third
What
column.
day did you use? You have 155 employees.
Okay,
As
so the
your
third column is
years.
straight from the salaries that are a part of Skyward, right?
So that their actual salaries
Mhm.
for people that are at year one,
Straight
2, 3, 4, 5.
Straight from
okay.
your Skyward.
So that does not have anything to do at all with the salary schedule.
Nothing.
Just
Yeah.
make sure.
No, that straight from the Skyward report.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I ain't getting that.
There's where the one goes. So, this right here is a memorandum of understanding, and it is understanding that, I don't know, every year is a little deja vu because we have to deal with some of the things that kind of get gifted to us from the legislature. And so what we are proposing is a memorandum of understanding that is seeking to get the legislature to increase the student-based allocation first. That we would have joint efforts within our community to make sure that people were aware of what was going on legislatively, that we were lobbying, that we were at the Capitol with some folks that were able to testify, utilizing some of our retirees, et cetera, to get to just the average within the nation. So just for a context, you know, we know that funding is one of the issues that we struggle with in terms of meeting the needs of the employees. We've got, of course, the information that we'll be passing out to you guys that also deals with kind of how far behind some of our teachers have fallen to this point. I know that you've possibly seen this up to this point. Let's see. Joe. There you go. There's your answers. Thank you, sir. But it was just salaries adjusted from the 2011 placement scale to inflation. And as some people had asked, they go, well, it stops at 28. Where do I stand? I have 32. Well, it only went to 28 in 2011. So now that the law had changed, everyone's on their own scale, et cetera. So it's a little bit all over the place, but it gives context to the reason why we would have to do something like this. But the legislative initiative basically says joint legislative activity to increase the student-based allocation to the national average, 16,208 per pupil. Source of information was from the National Center of Education Statistics. Activities shall include but not be limited to research, developing statute language, engaging legislators, grassroots and public awareness campaigns, coalition building, and testifying at hearings. Contingency is that provided the Florida legislature does not increase the student-based allocation to the national average by May 2nd, 2025, which is the last day of legislative session as it is on the calendar right now. Leon Classroom Teachers Association and Leon County Schools shall engage in the following. This goes to the idea of trying to deal with some resources through a millage initiative. The millage initiative is between Leon County Schools and LCTA. It is to earn additional financial resources needed to recruit and retain highly effective educators. It is also for additional financial resources for school safety and student enrichment activities. Would be seeking a 1 mil increase to be placed on the November 26th ballot. And that the millage, upon being voted successfully, will be provided additional revenue to use towards employee salaries and benefits. Therefore, the following tenets apply. So the idea is 10% would go to school safety and student welfare, including mental health. That we know that there are still, even at this point, we're not funded at the levels that we need for school safety and for a lot of the things that have been lingering effects of COVID. And then 10% millage increase would be allotted to enhance student educational programs such as science, arts, music, athletics. And so those monies would then be distributed out, field trips, things that we can't necessarily afford all the time, but we want to make sure that we provide for students. And then 80% of the millage increase revenue is allotted for compensation and benefits. Now, of that 80%, 83 would go to the instructional bargaining unit for the sole purpose of recruiting and retaining highly qualified educators. And the remaining 17% of the revenue shall be divvied up among support staff and site administration, so that we're also not leaving anyone necessarily behind, but we're trying to do something for everybody at the same time. And that the parties agree to meet at the negotiating table within 2 weeks upon the completion of the 2025 legislative session to finalize the terms of how the millage increase shall be distributed and to develop a referendum for the 2026 ballot if needed. And so this is our way of trying to be proactive in seeking solutions where other people may not be taking action. And given the high percentage of referendums that have passed throughout the state, you know, this is something that we believe is very achievable and benefits everybody at the end of the day.
Did you talk to people before you wrote some of this language? Is this language that was used in other counties in the state of Florida? Similar language?
Yeah, and because the issue is what we want to make sure that we do is that there's as many people that can see themselves in what it is, that it represents something for students, it represents something for the, for school safety, which means the sheriff's department would be involved. We know that, there's a benefit to our community, second largest employer in the district. So money that goes in the employees' pockets, more likely to go spend it within your own community and everything. But at the same time, the primary thing is, when we've got classrooms that are a physics classroom at one of our storied high schools, and it's a first-year person who's never taught physics, who just graduated, came in 2 months into the school year, we got to do better for those kids at that school to stabilize some of that learning so there isn't learning loss throughout the school year. And so we believe that this starts to achieve that.
So in your conversations with FEA, the similar language was then used in other counties where it successfully passed.
Already worked with.
And was it, do you know the number of counties that tried to pass?
I'm already gathering right now because some other individuals that would have a vested interest have asked the same thing. And so we know that we have the full backing of the FEA in terms of doing the polling, getting the questions asked, making sure that we are dotting our I's, crossing our T's, making sure that we do it the most appropriate way, and so that it ensures success at the end of the day.
And the memorandum of understanding, this is like an aside to this, or two separate issues?
There's two separate
right?
things to a certain degree. So the idea though is that we really want you to go ahead and say, yeah, 3.5, we can do this. Let's go ahead and rock and roll, sign, boom, sign the MOU, everything is, hunky dory, butterfly movies and fairy tales. But, that's for your team to go ahead and have a discussion. But we do think that the memorandum of understanding, we just need to do something proactive.
Yes. You and I've talked about this before. I mean, it's disappointing that we would have to do this. It's just, the state of Florida then is going to leave it up to each county to do really what they should be doing. And say, well, look, we'll just leave it like it is. Leon County will take care of Leon County, and Broward will take care of Broward, and so on and so forth.
It's happened in Miami-Dade, Brevard, Broward, Nassau, Hillsborough, Pinellas. It's happening statewide, and it's happening with a lot of success because regardless of the choices that are made in the legislature, sometimes people really want strong public schools. They want a great neighborhood school, and they understand what having a really good teacher in there is all about. And that after visiting that, like, whew, thank goodness you guys are doing it, kind of thing. So.
Well, in addition, our half-penny sales tax initiative expires at the end of 2027. So it will be on the ballot in 2026 as well.
Of course.
The continuation of the half-penny sales tax.
I would like to.
Which is about.
There's a lot of
$30 million
initiatives that could be, let's say, where there would be concern, right? That, what's the viability of certain things? But I think that we have choices at this point in time. We can go ahead and, continue the same song and dance and hope for a better future, or we can actually do something that initiates some change.
No, I agree. And Scott, I mean, my name's on this, but ultimately the school board has to be the one to go to the county commission to put it on the ballot.
Well,
Yes,
and that's
right.
why it would end up being part of the package that would then have to be voted by the school board, just like with the package that would be voted on by the instructional bargaining.
All right, you have more that you would like to present?
There's one more thing that I'd like to share, and that's just to make sure that as far as our proposals, you've got everything that we've got, I don't even think I need to pass 714, but it's basically your language from last time. We just greened it out, basically saying that, as far as the 4 days for the ESC service providers, we're in agreement with what that is. But I do want to make sure that you get the supplement one so that you can take a look at it. There were only basically 2 minor changes that were made to the supplement part. one of the things that, not just for myself, but for members of the bargaining unit, and what, a good contract has, there's some waiver language in here that doesn't necessarily codify what's in contract. It just says that some other entity will go ahead and make decisions about where it applies and doesn't apply. It is our preference that if there's something that we need to work out language wise, that we just add it to the contract. So the idea of as established at specific sites in accordance with district student activities parameters. I don't even know what that means necessarily, other than I don't think it's necessary. It's the red language at the bottom.
Oh,
And then when you turn it over to the back side, there's another kind of waiver as designated by district's student activities director. If someone's feeding animals and stuff, I mean, and has to go out there, that's gas, that's stuff. It's just 4%. That's not trying to, we just would rather it be very straightforward. The one thing that is brand new is at the very top of the page. Part of when we did the math on the back, the math coaches, it was that we were trying to get math competitions, just the same way robotics was highlighted today on the website, right? And there was the event at McClay High. Our math program, since Steve Freelander and a couple other people retired and stuff, is not what it once was. And there's a desire by those that are kind of in their last 4 years to make sure there's something of math competition that preserves. And so that's the initiation of why we wanted to do elementary, middle, and high school. And when we looked at your proposal, it only addressed middle and high school and did not address elementary school. So that's why you'll see elementary school from 16 to 20% in the same way that the middle school and the high schools were increased for academic coaches to then compensate for math competition person or others as seen fit by site-based decision making.
So right now is elementary school at 16%?
Yes.
Is that why it's crossed out and you're asking for a 4% increase?
Just the same way the middle school and the high school, yes.
We just want to, look, we're all for these types of activities going on with our kids. We just want to make sure there's someone that's vetting that these things are actually happening, that there is someone going to feed the sheep and the cattle and the donkeys and all the yard animals, right?
Right.
The people, those things are actually happening as opposed to someone just saying, hey, I'm going to feed the chickens. And that's why there was another layer of sign off on. And I think when those PAS maybe get sent in, that happens then too. So.
Well, I think we were encouraged hearing that the last time that we were saying to maybe look at all of our supplements and what are the minimum expectations and codifying those things so that people know when I sign up to do this, this is what I'm expected to do.
Right.
I mean, I think at bare minimum, right, the animals still being alive would be like the indication that they're getting fed, but.
Well, not necessarily.
But I mean, I think that the people that are taking care of these programs, not just agriculturally, but any of these programs, right, are doing their due diligence to do it right and to make sure that the appropriate steps are taken. And they're not, I would like to think that they're not sitting there taking advantage of a supplement and going, well, we're not going to do anything. And it is important to have the checks and balances in that scenario. But the people that are wanting to do agriculture or some of these more in-depth things, I think are doing their diligence on that behalf.
But I do think we need to ensure through that handbook that it's consistent, that these are the expectations, because the supplement is for after hours activities, whether it's the math competition or the band concerts or or the drama productions and those things that are happening after hours. And people do a lot of look, I get it. I know.
Yeah.
So.
And I know that sometimes we make rules for the 1%, like, but then it kind of tarnishes the folks that are doing 99% of things right, because they're like, what did I do wrong? And they're just trying to go along. So I think we all recognize that part. And so, anything we can do to kind of encourage and make sure that those things are taken care of,
Okay.
going to be positive. But just because,
At the same time, Scott, you and I deal with all these contract issues on a day-to-day basis. And, that level of leeway is not always there. That's why you find the need to make sure that it's clarified in the contract. Because there needs to be parameters.
No,
And if
no.
we don't clarify it in the contract, then there will be a day where you're coming to me and saying, no, this is what the contract says. And that understanding's got to go both ways at that point in time.
I don't know what I said that would make you think I don't agree with that. But because quite honestly, sometimes the idea is like, we're against accountability. I mean, you want your kids to do their homework and do their assignments, but we're for accountability left and right. So at the end of the day, we agree that there needs to be, and I think you are correct when you say that the language is very clear. The language in the handbook is not in the contract yet, and it needs to be so that it is very clear. And then we just fold it into there and get with it.
Well, the only problem with that is that the language in the handbook has to be able to be changed, to respond to the circumstances of the day. And
We're
you and I
available
would
to
both
negotiate
know
whenever.
that the contract language is not available to be changed at as needed.
Well, I guess one concern would be much like what's happening now, where what was once a lesson plan is now slides, and what was a lesson plan now has to be on Canvas at school sites, and 1,400 different parameters that if it's not done right, then now I'm gonna ding you in domain 4 and this, that, and the other thing. There's checks and balances that need to be in place that make it a reasonable quote, and I think we can work together to do that. So I'm not sure what the concern is, but I hear you about it. But we're responsive. We've been nothing more than responsive. I mean, we're ready to sit down anytime. So we can cross that bridge at a later time. Would you like to caucus now?
Yes, please. Yes.
This last, the piece right here though on, I guess this is the ESE teachers,
Yes.
right? We had already agreed to the 4
That
days.
was your language.
Right.
That was in blue. We put it in green because we've
Okay.
been putting things in green where we find mutual agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, this was part of I knew that we didn't have a TA,
Right.
green copy of this at this point in time. Was one of the things I was going to bring up tonight.
Yeah.
Check
got
that
you,
off
man.
the list.
Name the police.
All right.
10 minutes,
Yes.
5 minutes.
Are we 10?
Oh,
15 minutes?
I'm gonna crop that video right there.
Yes, sir.
All right, you ready?
All right.
So I would love to be able to do this. I really would. We had long discussions this summer about our fund balance and how much money we felt like we could offer all of our units. We drove our unrestricted fund balance, we believe at the end of the year, to $10 million, and we took $2 million out of the emergency reserve to give us a total of $5 million to distribute amongst all of our units. And I've been authorized by the school board to present a $4 million package to you guys, and that's it. I've also been authorized by the school board that if we can't come to an agreement on that, which I understand, that'll be up to you, that we're going to declare impasse. I'm sorry, Scott, I don't think it's the financially responsible thing to do. Hopefully the legislature will start ponying up as far as this language right here. I've talked to you before that if they don't, I'm all willing to sign off on something like this after we can be vetted and discussed thoroughly with, some attorneys and what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do. But as far as the money that's on the table that's being presented, that's what the school board has authorized me to present. All right.
And just for reference, in surveying the bargaining unit, they've said that it's not enough. So, I mean, that's just where things are based off of their perspective as well. So it's
Right. And I agree. It's not enough. And it probably will never be enough. But I think it would be irresponsible of us if we went any further right now, especially until all of the ESSER money washes through the system. The ESSER money came to an end at the end of, 2 months ago, at the end of September. We have a lot of positions that have been funded from ESSER funds that we are continuing to fund. And so I think the money that we have pushed out there now for salary increases is as far as I'm willing to extend ourselves financially, and the school board feels the same way. But don't think that we think because it's enough. It's not. And so if y'all want to think about that or talk about that, or if we want to just go ahead and declare that we're in an impasse on compensation and then talk about language and figure out moving forward what language we can agree to, or what language will potentially follow or join compensation at impasse, we can do that.
well, I think the most prudent thing is to deal with the language part first and figure out where to go from there afterwards. Yeah, that's pretty much where things are. I mean, we have moved off of our position and to say it's disappointing is an understatement. Just really, I mean. So. We're gonna caucus for a little bit.
Okay.
Conversation.
You want to take 10 minutes? How many you want to take?
We'll
Start
take,
with 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then
he said 15, 6:20.
Can you print from the production room?
Say it again.
Can you print from the production rooms?
We'll talk. I don't think. Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't.
We're both recording.
Please.
Yeah.
You don't hold them.
Hide them.
No, I don't.
So, we'll accept whatever language proposals you have and, we'll go from there.
So just to clarify, the point of where we're at right now is to try and distinguish what we're going to include in our package as we move forward to take to impasse. Each one of these issues would be discussed with the special master. And so obviously we would like to try and resolve any of the language, issues that we can.
We know right where
on the
we are.
front
We're
end.
good with it. That's why we're asking for the proposal, so.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. So. can we
But
pass that
it's
in,
very
please?
clear where the intent is, so. We appreciate the clarity.
Money or 25-minute functions.
Are you ready?
Mhm.
Please.
All right, so as we move into 7.01 A3, we are proposing current contract language as it relates to this issue. As we've indicated, given the compounding of time, to expand it by the additional minutes would really create a hardship for many of our schools, in that the lunch periods would dramatically increase beyond where they are right now. And then, as we've said in the past, in some cases, it's already taking 3 or 4 hours to get through. And so to continue to expand it just creates more of a hardship, just on the schedule as a whole. So.
Eating in 12 minutes is a hardship.
But it is,
Wait.
but I will say this, it is something that I'm willing to dive deeper into.
Did you
to do
just say that it takes 3 to 4 hours for lunch?
That's what has been indicated.
Elementary.
the schedule.
Elementary.
But it is something, like I said, that we will dive deeper into to see if there's flexibility and we can build some more time into the schedule. Okay.
It's a lot of, we appreciate that. But between the stance on the money and the stance on the language, it's a whole bunch of no. There ain't much compromise going on, because I've crossed out.
Let me go back. Let me go back to the money thing too, real quick. Last year, I heard again and again and again, it would be nice to have a deal done in August where teachers knew at the beginning of the year what they were going to be paid. And I took that to heart, and so did the school board. And that's why we made the decision from the very beginning to offer as much money up front as we thought we could. And that was the $4 million. And that was to potentially get people paid sooner rather than later. But yet here we are again now in the end of December, heading to January, without a contract and without teachers getting paid. That was the intent from the very beginning. So once we came to the table with our best offer, that's all they were willing to give. And that's all we felt like we could give. Now, no matter as far as being disrespectful or not being respected and not coming up with another $1 million, that's language for you guys, to figure out how you want to sell your narrative. But on our end, we were bound and determined we were going to come with as much money as we thought we possibly could without being irresponsible. And that's exactly what we did. All right.
And to be clear, the point of us going to impasse at this point in time is to get money in the hands of teachers faster.
You know what?
Faster.
I take umbrage with that, because it's not about just putting money in teachers' hands. These folks right here are not here because they think that any amount will do. They're having trouble paying bills. There are people worried about being homeless. There are, from the folks that responded to the survey, right? We're talking huge percentages that are most likely ready to leave Leon County schools because the increased workload, the lack of salary movement, and the idea that they're last on the totem pole when it comes down to decision makings to make sure that they can stay in the classroom. Now, we can go ahead and we can sugarcoat it. We can say all different kinds of things, where my heart is. It's the legislature's fault. It's the school board's fault. They don't want to move anymore. The issue is, where there is will, There has always been movement in Leon County schools. When you wanted to go ahead and give money to the arts, you gave money to the arts. When you wanted to do this, you did this. When you want to do that, you did that. It's about priorities. It's about wants and making sure that it happens when that is something that you're really interested in doing. I think that's part of the issue. And that the folks that are back here don't see themselves in those same ways that get put in a school board meeting in the first hour of highlights, because it's not something that actually impacts them in their daily life of teaching in that classroom, in their life about being able to pay their bills. And yes, there are career choices, but those career choices were because those people wanted to do something, because there was a teacher just like you that said, you know what, believe more in yourself, do more. You can be better than what you are. And they blood, sweat, and tears do that every single day, but that doesn't pay the bills. And at some point in time, there's a breaking point. So at this point in time, we'll deal with the language. The money part has already been very clearly indicated from the district, but we will not be pandered to that we want to put money in the pocket of teachers as soon as possible, when that's what we want to do too. But it has to be something that helps them go ahead and move forward. They're falling further and further behind every single time.
I think the idea that if money wanted to be in the hands of teachers quicker, we would agree on the salary proposal in March of the year prior, right? We wouldn't even wait till August when the school year starts. We would say, you know what, this is a priority. Let's build in this salary proposal in March when we're creating the budget that we're going to propose out, and not wait for it to be in July and August when we all sit down together. And I know other districts are doing that. They're putting their salary proposals together for year 25-26 in February, March timeframe to negotiate it out. And we don't even particularly start bargaining at that point in time in this district, because it
We're
goes
never
on for so
finished.
long. So, you know, when we're looking at it, we're looking at what teachers can and cannot afford and who's paying the bills. All the bills are expensive across the board. Your side of the table, our side of the table, but we're not receiving the raises that provide the impact for us to be able to continue to afford certain things. Do you know what it costs to put a child in childcare? Just out of curiosity. Anybody in this, on that side of the table? $1,400 a month to put a child in childcare per month. Now, when you look at what people are bringing home outside of taxes, right? Because taxes, yeah, we all have to pay them, but that's not what we get to take home. That's half of a paycheck, if not more, for some people. When you start excluding healthcare and all of the other things, when you have half of your paycheck for your younger teachers that are going into childcare, mortgage, cars, student loans, this, that, and the other, because we can't become educators without having appropriate education. We all know that. And so the people that are sitting on this side of the table, and your side of the table, appropriately educated as well, are sitting with those burdens as well. And it's becoming harder and harder with more barriers to enter to become educators, because they want to raise the standards, right? We want to have certain certificates. We want to have certain educational value for these people. And our younger teachers are unable to stay in this career. They're just not able. They come in, they stay 3 or 4 or 5 years at most, and then they realize they can't afford to. So then they have to leave, and they have to go find another point of employment. And if they're not finding another point of employment after they've left the district, they've had to find it to supplement their income while they are in the district working. And I think that there's more teachers in this district that have 2 sets of employment than there are not in a lot of cases. And I think it's a very difficult conversation, and the district might only be able to do what was done. And I think that there's an appreciation of, you came forward with your best offer, but if it was really a priority, we would reallocate funds that are not being spent elsewhere to this priority. And saying that 4 million is the best and brightest we can do. Okay. Then I don't know if we can really move forward at that point, when the teachers that have voted in our survey and that we represent are saying that's just not enough. It's not keeping up with inflation. It's not allowing us to pay our bills.
And to be clear, it wasn't just members, it was the entire bargaining unit of the survey.
Correct. Yeah, bargaining.
So
It's fine, let's go to language. Let's get the show on the road.
All right, so with regard to 7.01B, this is the same deal. We're proposing current contract language. This is the information related to the work from home. As we've indicated, this is something, and we had board meeting discussions about this last week. This is something that we are exploring as a district, but we just don't have the parameters laid out for at this point in time. And as we move forward and further, flesh out that policy, it's something that we definitely be willing to come back to the table and discuss.
To be clear, you don't need a policy to negotiate. And to be clear, for people already doing it. So let's continue.
I'm not gonna go back and.
It don't, at this point, don't, let's just go through it.
All right, 7.03D. This is where it was the changing the 2 half days to an hourly basis. In our last proposal, we had proposed that we break it down to 7.5 hours. And of course, your counter was that, we would include that it should only be 6.5 hours because it includes the lunch that you guys have negotiated for these pre-planning days, for the planning days in general. However, our position on that is that you break down 2 half days at 7.5 hours. If you further break it down and do training for individuals for professional development or whatever, an hour, 2 hours there, it can be spread throughout the entire year without having to take up a full half day. It is actually more beneficial for both sides to have it split up. However, we feel strongly that it needs to be 7.5 hours and not 6.5 hours because it doesn't apply. However, so we either go 7.5 hours or we can circle back and be at current.
Keep
So
going,
what's your choice? You'll have.
keep going. We have to caucus.
Okay.
Just keep going.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. All right, with regard to 7.4A4. This is related to removing parent-teacher organization meetings from the language that references what would be considered professional responsibilities. We've already agreed to language in other parts of that paragraph. However, we feel strongly that this is an example of the kind of thing that would be considered professional responsibilities and should remain in the contract. So our position on that would be that it needs to be current contract language.
Let me ask you this,
Yes,
you just give them this? Or you gonna go through each one of these?
generally we
Yes,
go through them so that they can ask questions and
I don't think there's
interact.
gonna be any questions. You wanna go through each one of these? You want us just to give you a summary of the ones that haven't been agreed to yet? Or keep going?
I mean, we can see which ones haven't been agreed. I think we'll. Okay.
Do you want to keep going or do you want to just look at the proposals?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Just in case there's any context that you'd like to share.
Gotcha. All right. So with regard to 7.04B2, we propose changes to the expiration of the comp time that teachers receive during the year. That change would essentially give them 1 year to use comp time from the time that it was earned. However, when you guys countered back, you did not want to include the language in that portion that related to the time not carrying over if that individual was non-real, right? So we cannot agree to the original language without that portion being included. However, we do feel like it is a very fair offer to expand the length of time that the comp time is available, versus just going back to our current language, which is going to have an expire at the end of each year. So we would, what we would like
So
to consider
gracious.
is sorry.
So I guess is the concern that someone earned 20 hours of comp time in a school and goes to a school where they have no comp time?
The concern is the amount of record keeping that is necessary to have that leave follow them from school to school is it's going to it presents an issue. It also it presents quite a bit of an opportunity for us to be in non-compliance with the contract. And so at the end of the day, that's not something that we're interested in doing. We want to remain in contract compliance. We want to offer the opportunity for these teachers to be able to expand the length of time that they can carry that comp time. But,
Are there two sections in with Skyward where both comp times can be calculated and kept?
Yes.
Please. Are there two places with?
there's numerous places, yes.
Two places
But-
within Skyward that allow both comp times to be calculated and
There's
kept?
numerous places in Skyward.
So,
However, that requires
Record-keeping
someone,
wise, it is not nearly as difficult if everyone uses Skyward.
but someone has to enter it all. And so record keeping at that point in time becomes an even greater burden because someone's then having to enter every one of those entries for every single teacher into Skyward.
We recognize the burden. We wish that you would recognize the work that people.
We do
to earn-
recognize their work.
To earn the time and that's their time because it's earned through the process that's already within the contract.
All right, 7.05A, 2 and 3. This is just related to faculty meetings. Once again, here, there's a ton of green language and, just note, there's a ton of green language throughout this entire process that we've agreed upon, right? There's a ton of green language. However, in your last proposal, you were specific in excluding standard or extended workday. And unfortunately, if you exclude standard and extended workday in 3, then it basically changes the context in which that passage is applied, right? So an individual, at this point in time, we're talking about faculty meeting can be scheduled 30 minutes after the end of the standard or extended workday without having to notice an extension of the meeting or an individual being able to say, sorry, I can't make it because I've got XYZ. At some point in time, these faculty meetings are meaningful. We need people to be at those meetings so that they can hear what is said. We've made concessions that will allow for individuals when it's going to go beyond the 30 minutes to be able to get that information from another teacher, pick it up. But we cannot have a situation where every single time we have a meeting, we have teachers that are unable to make that meeting. So if we change that, if we changed it and just said the end of the workday, well, you have individuals that are on a non-standard workday, then at that point in time, they're already 30 minutes past by the time that they end.
But it applies to that employee's workday, which could be an extended workday. No?
The way that it's read? Yeah, what's your question?
Okay, and so it's a genuine question. So the word workday, if I'm an extended contract teacher, would I not then assume the word workday
It's my ex-
means extended? Or is it not for those people? Is it for the person that's part-time, that's only a half of a day that needs to be at a faculty meeting? But that faculty meeting occurs, they're part-time in the morning and the faculty meeting doesn't occur till 2:30. So now it's not only 30 minutes past their work day, but that I don't know if they fall into the standard or extended day either.
That's my question. I mean, when I looked into this whole situation, it's already referenced in 2 as well, the up above. We're not looking to eliminate it there. So we're talking about, if you look at the first line there, it says a 72-hour notice shall be provided for any required faculty meeting which extends beyond the standard or extended workday.
So you
by
asked
more than a
for
half hour.
consistency,
Correct.
but
And so
For clarity.
otherwise, if we get to that point, if we get to that point, then every other thing in this entire provision, every other piece of this article, we've agreed to. It's just those 2 words that we need to
So just as a point of clarification, let's say that you work a 7.5 hour day. Mr. Knight works a 8.5 hour day. You're not expected to stick around until Mr. Knight gets off to go to a faculty meeting like it happens at Childs. There's 2 different faculty meetings, correct?
That would be my assumption of why it was written the way that it was written.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we have agreement on kind of that folks aren't expected to stick around. Even
I mean, are you running into that kind of an issue where you have principals that are saying, no, you gotta
No,
wait
I'm
around till
not making a
4:30?
problem out of it. I'm just asking for clarity so that people, when they ask, we know exactly what our mutual intent was. That's all.
Gotcha.
Oh,
My principal starts at 4:20,
Oh.
5 minutes after.
Your school ends at
Yeah.
almost.
4:15
So,
is our contracted hour. Our school ends, all the students leave by 3:55. So at 4:20, 5 minutes after our contracted hour, we are required to stay 1 extra hour after. An hour and 5 minutes after our contracted time. Because he gave 72-hour notice.
okay. But in this case, if we agree to this language,
correct.
you'll be able to say, I'm sorry, I'm not able to be at that meeting. I won't be there past this 30 minutes, but I'll be responsible for making it up and getting the information on.
Thank
But
you
in
for the
order to
clarity.
get to that point, we have to have an agreement on all of it. So, you know, I think that we are trying to make progress that is meaningful and makes sense for both sides. That's why, I mean, and that's why we're here. So we can put systems in place that work so that we have efficiently run schools, but also you guys are not taking advantage of as workers, as employees, right? So I mean, that's the reason why we're here. All right. With regard to district meetings, I mean, this is, you know, unfortunately, this is where we're at. Current contract language, because attendance at these meetings have always been considered part of their professional duties as a salaried professional to attend these meetings. And so,
No, because the workday is 7.5 hours, and if you're required to do something after your standard workday, it should be at its hourly rate.
no, you're not hourly employees. And
Thank you,
and
Brett.
and the
I
and the
understand we're not hourly
and the
employees, but our
whole-
contract is defined by our work hours though, so.
but what I would say is that the whole premise of professional duties are well established within this contract. And so that was one of the primary reasons why, okay, we agreed to a 7.5 hour contract,
Mhm.
because we know that certain things are professional duties that fall under your duties as a salaried professional that you will do outside the 7.5 hours.
Don't worry.
Outside of
We'll
getting
file
paid.
what we need to file if something comes up. We appreciate it. Thank you.
7.10 B and C. This is proposing that we codify the process for requesting supplies and distributing the Florida Classroom Supply Assistance Program in contract. And, you know, we had agreed to B. We do not agree to C, primarily because state statute clearly indicates that this is not part of, you know, collective bargaining. It should be excluded from collective bargaining. However, I want to point out that this is something that we already do. Does not need to be codified into contract because we already pay individuals. Every person who is a teacher gets paid this classroom supply assistance program money,
So,
as I understand it.
correct. So while that's happening under this administration, if this administration were to change over,
Yeah.
right?
That's why you put. it in
That's why we would
contract.
want it in the contract, is so that way it continued to happen, because the generosity here might not be the same under another person.
Okay. And
So if we need to word it differently, right, because it cannot be negotiated, but it would be, you know, maybe a phrasing of, the money's equal to the money's distributed for this goes to the additional employees.
And that's all it says. It doesn't say that it's distributed based off of the state statute. It says money's equal to,
It is, it's in statute how we do
so.
it, based on statute. Which says if you're a teacher, you
I
That's the
mean,
point of clarification.
ultimately, our obligation as a district is to comply with statute. Okay, and so that means that if for some reason we run into financial difficulties down the road, we may need the leeway to not apply this within the context that we currently do. And so, as it stands, yes, we do it the way that we do. And that's a conscious decision that we've made. We very much hope to continue to do it that way. But if we tie our hands, we don't have an option moving forward. At this point in time, we're prepared to continue to move forward the way we have. We're just not willing to include this language in the contract.
So just to be clear, that if there is an individual that does have student contact that doesn't receive the supplied money, the district is still willing to go give that person an equal amount, but just not put it in the contract. That's kind of what you said, like we're already
It needs to
doing
be a
this.
teacher though.
Yeah, it needs to be a teacher. It's a teacher. Yeah,
Okay, no,
I mean, that's based, so hold on a second, sorry.
Correct.
I'm just based, so I'm looking, that's the way that we're approaching it currently.
Currently, yes.
So if you find out that there are people that are not getting paid,
we have people that are not teachers within the bargaining unit that do have student contact, and that's the intent of the language, that when you have someone that is speech or.
are they not getting paid?
No.
No, they don't get the
They don't get the
bonus.
money based off of the way the state statute's written. But they still have student interface that takes place. It may just not be in a traditional classroom setting,
It's all about speech.
so.
But
It's positive, yeah.
So I think the way I'm understanding is, the state has a strict definition of what a classroom teacher is, and we have been given this allocation above to other guidance counselors and other people that are considering being, or considered classroom teachers, and they want to put it in a contract that it will continue to be received by all teachers, whether they're considered a classroom teacher or not, right?
correct.
It's for members of the bargaining unit.
That actually
Have student contact.
Contact.
The whole
in
point is that they're
way.
not coming out of money for their own stuff to supply for their students, such as speech language pathologists who need stuff for their students, for
Guidance
their,
counselors.
that they service. Guidance counselors need stuff for their service, and they are told that to use their teacher allocation money, but they're not given their teacher allocation money.
So what people else,
They should be.
so do you get the money?
Yeah,
Okay.
SLPs do actually, yeah. So in the
Yeah.
past, I have received that as an SLP. There may be, I'm not sure about OTPT guidance,
Yeah.
those people, I don't know, I can't speak to that. But yes,
As
I
a
get it.
principal, I've always based it on student contact. Even in my current position, anybody that has student contact, I definitely advocate for that. And I've been questioned by finance, but once I'm able to provide students tied to them, then they get the money.
Yeah, but that's a site-based decision, and not all states. are like that. No, that's why.
But as we've indicated, I mean, what we're telling them as a district is if they're a teacher and they have students tied to them, that they should be receiving.
Correct. I don't think that the dig is that it's not happening right now, or that the comments are that it's not happening right
Sure.
now, but if we could secure it for the future. It's not about what is or isn't happening now, but moving forward, can this continue to be done? If you all are not the people that are in these seats in 4 years from now, can it still be continued to be done? We only get to guarantee that as a city.
I understand.
Next, I'm gonna go to 7.19. Basically, this is the splitting of classroom discussion that really gets at, saying in non-emergencies, teachers cannot be required to substitute or split classes. And in emergencies, as a secondary option that we'll be able to split classes, but only if we pay the teachers at the splitting of the substitute rate of pay. And so, at this point in time, as we've indicated, what we have advocated across the entire district is that principals do not split classes. This has not been built into our budgets to be able to pay this additional rate for the splitting of classes. And so what we've indicated is that they just don't need to be splitting classes unless it is an absolute emergency. So as it stands, we're prepared to stay at current contract language. That'll wrap up 7.
So if I understand A and B correctly, then you're saying that the classes aren't being split.
I'm not saying with 100% certainty that classes are not being split, because I know for a fact that there are one-offs that have occurred where classes are being split. And I would also argue that there are a lot of instances where that's happening, and it's not the administrator who is setting it up. It's the teachers themselves that are agreeing. I'll cover for your folks. I'll cover for your folks, so that individuals can be out for an appointment here or there. Right. Our point is we're discouraging the practice of splitting classes and giving additional students to teachers in order to deal with a vacancy.
Our issue is beginning of the day. It's a day long thing. It's not like I got an appointment at 2:15 kind of thing. This is like for the entire course of the day, you have a split class and you're receiving students. So if the district is saying that it's not happening, then can we codify that it won't happen? But that if it does happen, that something, you're saying it's not happening.
Is that
so why
something
can't
that you,
we
well, we talked about that. We asked the question earlier in bargaining, do you want us to codify and say this will not occur?
Yeah.
And okay, the answer is now yes. Okay.
Well,
Because that wasn't the way that I perceived the response to be the last time.
no, I think the response was, it's gonna happen. Logistically, especially within an elementary school, it's going to happen because there's going to be someone who's out. There's going to be, there may be a point in time when you have to. But if it's like at the beginning of the day and there's supposed to be a substitute that's secured, there are monies that are already tied to that substitute coming into that classroom covering it. So it is built into the budget. There's supposed to be a sub there. So when the sub isn't there, why can't the money go to the people that go ahead and take on the additional responsibility?
Well,
Because it's
like
not
we talked about,
money that
most
wasn't
times it's
already
not an
allocated.
issue of, it's a sub type issue. It's someone needs to be gone for a class period or two.
We're not
They have an
talking about
appointment to
those
run out.
situations. We're
And so
talking-
I'm talking about the practical matters that
Right.
we all run into.
Mhm.
So like, you're correct. If it is we're not trying to split classes on the backs of teachers. We're telling administrators, if you have an absence, get a sub or use support staff in a capacity that has been allowed for in their contract to cover that class, rather than splitting classes, because you guys have articulated time and time again the fact that you do not appreciate taking on additional students. And so, yes, it does
I don't know
occur.
if that's the phrasing that you should
Oh,
be using, but
it's not intended to be offensive. I'm just saying. That's, the bottom line is what we're trying to do here is say, we're discouraging the splitting of classes. Okay. And so to that end, we don't want to create language that's really just going to encourage the splitting of classes, but also in addition, our sub budgets are not built for the expansion of this kind of a practice. So it does have a fiscal impact as well.
I need you to help clarify how it's not built into the sub budget, that if somebody is absent and a sub is supposed to be secured for the school site, how that's not built into the budget, that money could then go to the people that actually take on the responsibility.
Hold on a second. So we've had this conversation before that we were going to use paras and others and not split classes as best we possibly could, right?
Absolutely.
Unless it was absolutely necessary.
Mhm.
And I think according to our people, we've tried our very best to do that, to have paras in there or even executive assistants or whoever, executive
Right.
secretaries and others. And what you're saying is if there is a situation where a classroom teacher is running late and 8 kids get sent here and other 8 kids get sit there, the teachers then split $15 an hour for however long it is, divided by the number of kids that they receive from each class. Is that what you're asking?
That's essentially what the contract language they propose said, yes.
I think that we would all agree that if somebody was coming to the school site and running late, you were never intending to get a substitute in a situation like that. But when someone calls in and is sick and a class then gets split up because you can't secure a sub, you've got the students all day kind of deal, vast majority, that's a different situation. So whatever clarifying pieces need to be, put in that may clear all hearts and minds, that's fine. We understand that many times teachers, because they want to do what they can to help support their colleagues, when someone does have like a meeting in the middle of the day or whatever, there's an appointment for a child or something, they help each other out. We get that part. Those aren't the instances we're talking about. We're talking about when you should be securing a substitute for a vacant position for the day. Why would, it's already allocated in terms of funds. It's not something that is above and beyond what is already would have happened if a sub was available.
So I know from time to time, we would have, if you had a large high school with 80 people and you had 15 or 16 out, there were some in a training, then some people call in sick. That they would send 2 or 3 classes to the gymnasium and the physical education coaches may watch those classes in the gymnasium. And what I guess you're proposing is the physical education instructor would receive $15 per hour, or however much that is, for 7.5 hours in addition to their
Per class
salary.
that they're watching
Per
because
class
they've
that
got that additional number of students. I mean, 70 students in a gym is not an easy thing to deal with.
No, I'm right. I'm not saying it is. I just
I think it's more,
been the practice in this district for over 3 decades in cases
Well,
of
in Palm Beach
emergency.
County, they have a splitting class MOU already in place. So it does happen in other counties that MOUs are put in place for splitting of classes.
Or one person watching multiple classes. Because in this case, it's usually one person watching multiple classes. So
Well, from a secondary perspective, that may be,
Right.
but not from an elementary perspective. That's where there's a,
Craig, I think it's
difference.
happening less at the high school level than it is at the elementary level.
well, y'all may be hearing about it more at the elementary level.
I
So
think
when
at
you
the
say
high
it,
school level,
so
there
if-
might be a substitute assigned to the media center, and there might be 3 or 4 classes in there with a substitute. But it is not the impression that we're under, that there are multiple classes going to the gymnasium anymore. Or they might have multiple classes in the cafeteria, and they would say, if you have a 5th period planning or 3rd period planning, we need to cover this day, and so a teacher's taking their entire planning period to do that, as opposed to adding them to their current student load during a 2nd period. It would be somebody covering during the planning period, is what I think the impression is that's happening at high schools.
and with elementary, as much as we're trying to use paras and other non-instructional people to cover those classes from time to time, even in elementary school, if there was 20 kids in a class and the teacher was out all day and they couldn't get a sub, they're still sending 10 to one and 10 to the other.
It's usually split amongst the grade level. So if you have
5 to
5
6
teachers
or
on a
something.
team, then each teacher will get 4, but in 4th and 5th grade, you have 23 students, so you have 7 extra kids in the class. So you have 30 kids in small rows.
So grade level makes sense. So if you had 4 teachers and it's split amongst those other 3, so those kids are getting because their lesson plans should be on some of the same schedule, and
Give or
they're-
take. I mean, they have their own assignments that they're working on, so they're just in the room, so you're having to manage 2 classes.
And
at the same
then-
time.
and then are you proposing that 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 sub pay for the entire day, $15 times 7.5 hours would be split amongst 3 different teachers.
It's proportional at that point, yes. Because what we don't want to do is go above what the cost of the sub is, but we do want to show, you know, you've taken on that additional workload the substitute was supposed to have.
And in this instance, right, we're not talking about the instances where I have an appointment, I ask him to cover it. It's something that's been assigned to us by an administrator. So therefore it would be tracked that way if it was assigned out in that scenario. That's where it comes from. So that's it.
Well, and I think that going back to the original conversation around this is that kind of coverage happens more frequently in terms of splitting classes than the principal actually assigning people to split classes because they've been directed not to split classes.
Okay, let's move on.
All right, so we're at 8.01.
Yes.
And this is related to the replacing the term identical courses with comparable courses within language addressing the considering the course loads.
Okay, so this is essentially the proposal from the last session.
Saying no to all of it, yes.
Okay, we can go on to the next one.
Right.
unless we have-
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So everything's gone? Okay.
Yeah, the bottom line, we're proposing current contract language for all of 8.
Okay,
Maybe we should have taken Rocky's little cheat sheet. Is there something that did get passed?
Sure.
Okay.
In 10, that's 10.
Try not.
okay,
There you go.
yeah, you're right. I don't know, okay. I'll try to get it in. Can you give me like
What
the footnote on this?
what happened?
Yeah, what?
So 10 is the one, obviously, I know that Chris is the one that's been taking the lead on 10 for you guys, so it's obviously
I don't understand what happened.
it's not great that he's not here, but if you look on the 3rd page, there's that's where you start seeing the green
Mhm.
associated with where we're at. And a lot of what is in 10, the whole first page where it's crossing out, is just reordering of information. It is just changing the location of the information, not necessarily changing the content involved in the passage. So it's just been putting it so that we're, being a little bit more thoughtful in the way that we talk about it. The first section talks about the employee's rights to representation, and how when you go through, a person is requested to meet for a disciplinary situation, that they have the right to have an LCTA representative available to assist them in that process. But then also we changed. We had been proposing language that would take out the requirement that we advise teachers in a investigatory type situation that they have the right to representation. However, we've switched that back to the current contract language in B for the most part. However, there was one issue that we needed to resolve in this language, and we feel like still needs to be resolved in this language. And that was the place where someone had put, or it had been approved at some point in time to include 24 work days to schedule a meeting to deal with an issue if it was of non-emergent nature, right? So we feel like that 24 work days is too long of a period of time to
We already
leave it
knew
out
it was a
there.
Scribner's area. We were,
Okay.
I think.
So we're
we had
still
already-
trying to fix that Scribner there,
Right.
100%. Well, we've also gone through and basically, changed, we took into consideration some of the pieces that Chris had proposed, or you guys have proposed as part of the next passage. But what's really important is that, we want to allow for these meetings to take place as soon as possible, but not to allow them to, to just be drug on for an extended period of time. And so what we've done here is we've said that in no instance shall the time frame be extended beyond 3 days as a result of union availability. We then have gone forward and basically the same language that was proposed regarding the disciplinary process. We talk about disciplinary process and sort of reordering the language. The first part talks about the right to representation. The second part of this section talks about employee discipline and how we go about the employee disciplinary process. We talk about just cause. All of this is information that really was just moved or is expanding and explaining the information a little bit more thoroughly. And it talking about, A, what is just cause, B, the fact that we are engaging in progressive and cumulative discipline. We are outlining the methodology at which we're pursuing progressive and cumulative discipline. It would be a counseling memorandum, a written reprimand, suspension without pay, and discharge as the normal steps as you go through the process. And making it clear that for the purpose of this process, a verbal warning is not considered to be a formal disciplinary action. We talk, same language as we had proposed previously around the administrative leave piece that allows for individuals, as long as if they're in the midst of a process and they're placed on administrative leave, that as long as they're in compliance with everything, that they can remain on administrative leave during that process. But if at some point in time they are no longer participative or being responsive to us, that we can take them off of administrative leave. It does include indeed the predetermination conference process for suspension without pay and dismissal actions, and goes on to sort of outline that process, and the majority of which was proposed in the last portion by Chris, and so we are accepting the majority of that language. There is some adjustments to the way that it's done. Also, if you look at section B under notice of proposed action, we're just clarifying that the superintendent's disciplinary designee, who's usually a site administrator, may be or maybe another individual. I mean, essentially, we're just trying to paint the picture of who that is in this process, right? All the way through, that section has been, basically agreed to the language that was proposed last time that we met regarding the notice of final action. We have tried to incorporate the gist of what it is that Chris was looking for in this portion with the process that sort of balances our overall requirements. And what we were speaking to was the notification process. Once an individual has received a notice of final action, from the disciplinary designee, right? This is at the very end of the process. The next step in that process is that it goes to the board for final board approval. And a lot of what Chris had included in this was that the information, that individual will be notified in the process of when that was going to go to the board, and that process would be more formalized. And so what we've done is just sort of massage that language to sort of fit the process in a more streamlined manner, and to really articulate you know, specifically what the options are with regard to once that decision has been made by the board, what their grievance options are, or their right to review options are. Because I mean, ultimately, if it was the person that was taking advantage of this contract, they'd most likely be going through Article 6 and doing the grievance process, right? But in some cases, they may decide that they don't want to go through the grievance process. They want to do the evidentiary hearing process. And so we've included information in there that articulates that process and sort of how you would go about accepting and designating that process in contract. We clearly agree that if the superintendent's designee basically comes back and says after proposed action has been put forward and there's no disciplinary action related to a proposed action, that the disciplinary action, any related materials would not be retained in their personnel file. There's no finding that the violation occurred, that we're not going to maintain a file on that individual without evidence. Okay, so anyway,
Does
that
that mean that if it goes to the evidentiary piece, there's no findings that incident could then not be used in a future disciplinary decision-making process?
well, I think that two things that would normally occur before it went to, you would never get to the point of an evidentiary hearing in most cases in the way that I was describing it, because the disciplinary designee has basically said we're taking no action.
Mhm.
Right. And so I guess at that point in time, I would also agree that if we did take a final action and then it goes to the board and the board decides, no, we don't want to approve this action, then that would sweep it. So in any instance,
I'm just saying
if
that
the
it's
action is swept, we would not include it in future disciplinary proceedings because it was not sustained.
Thank
you. At least that's the way it's been proposed.
Okay, so in E on the last page, right, we've got if the superintendent or disciplinary designate issues a notice of strike final, now it's recommended action. That's correct. Because in all the other places,
So-
you've got it as final action.
This is a Scrivener's error on my
So it
part.
should say notice of final
Should say,
recommended
yeah.
action.
We could, to give you a little bit of breakdown, there was a thought process that we might go through and separate the two processes and do a recommended action that goes to the board and then a final action after the board, but it just becomes extremely problematic in terms of just overload of the process at that point.
So
in
then
time.
it
So
should
we're just
just
saying
say-
that we were going to include all of the information that would need to be in this in a final action letter that then goes to the board.
So then the wording in E should say
Final.
notice of final, scratch out recommended action.
Correct.
Okay,
So I apologize about that.
Okay. Okay.
But like we've indicated all along in this area, this is really our, attempt to really codify the process. And I think that it provides for a great deal of due process protections for the employee, right? And by codifying it, it also really helps for us to appropriately administer this process, because the last thing we want to do is to have a process that goes all the way to the end and then is blown up on a procedural issue because it should have never occurred, right? And so in doing this, we're putting procedural protections into place that will ensure that an individual is getting a fair shake at the same time as ensuring that the process is. Make sense? So, you may need to continue to look at this or come back with it. I think that one of the things that is an option on certain aspects of this is that we have the potential to continue to negotiate certain things if there is a desire to continue to negotiate the language issues.
Our desire has been to negotiate the intent.
Okay. All right, so the next thing is related to 16. Oh, actually 12. And it's really straightforward. We're proposing current contract language in 12, which was a proposal that we had put forward related to subs. And so basically we're pulling that proposal and current contract language. Are you passing on 12? 16.
This is 16.
Yeah.
12.
Sorry, I think so. I was going to 16 because 12 is basically just current contract language.
This is 12,
There was only
There's
one
no-
line that we were addressing in 12.
right?
It was related to the sub issue in 12.10,
So we're just going to current contract language.
just going to current contract language,
Okay.
because we had proposed that language. Basically, we're just withdrawing that
Uh-huh.
proposal.
I was under the impression that we did current contract language. Either way, we're where we are.
That may very well be in. Just saying that when we originally put it forward, everyone was issues. All right.
So you're tooling the continuity of the classroom proposal as well?
We are.
Okay.
In response to the counter, we're basically at a place where current contract language is where we feel like, we feel like we could only agree to that at this point in time. The counter that you proposed basically reduced the parameters around the sick leave buyback. And there's a couple of things that are in there that we really feel like are non-starters from a financial perspective related to that issue.
So let me understand this correctly. That in terms of the continuity of the classroom, you are not willing to go ahead and move down here, but you're also not even willing to do your original proposal.
That's correct.
So the entire thing's been pulled, including your original proposal.
So our original proposal, which was countered by you,
Correct.
basically at this point in time, we are now saying we're going back to current contract language.
So, okay, so I'm.
If you'd
just-
like, do you want us to put back on the table the
No, I
original?
was just trying to make sure that I understand where things are. So that, because what it does sound like is no to salary, no to a lot of other things that have been passed across, and no to this. And so I'm just trying to understand where things are, that's all.
To be honest with you, we've talked about money being an issue,
Mhm.
right? And the fact that we only have $4 million. We had the additional money to fund these programs, we would be putting it towards salaries.
And I think this is gonna be an issue we're gonna dive deeper into in the coming year, to look at what other districts are doing. We just haven't had time to dive deep into it. I think this is something that other districts are doing. I just want to make sure that we are very thoughtful before we make a decision about how to go about doing it.
I appreciate that, but I need you to make sure that what we hear is
That
maybe
doesn't
in the
mean,
future, in the future, there's a lot of projecting that we're exploring this idea, we're in favor of this piece, we're in there, but I guess we could be researching this for years and stuff.
well, I
so
think the two that I'm really committed to are this sick leave buyback program district-wide. And then the issue of parental leave, and both of those are gonna come with a cost. But we just need to figure out and be very thoughtful before we launch a plan of sick leave buyout, that we're doing it the right way.
For a frame of reference, overwhelmingly, it was salary. So I know that with everything comes a price tag and stuff. It's appreciated that it's kind of targets and thoughts for moving forward. But in the absence of kind of, I guess the issue is if we keep dinking and dunking, we're never gonna be able to address the other bigger issue.
I got it.
And so we can dink and dunk all day long, but not
Okay.
everyone's gonna get to use parental leave.
Yeah.
People have to work the entire year in order to get buyback. The buyback will have to have multiple years within the district, so you can't even access it right away, et cetera.
Alright.
So, you know,
Salary's the
Just
one
to
thing
keep
that
it
affects everything. I agree. All right. You done with 16?
Nope. So. Switching pages here, one second. All right, so 16.26 is the next area that we were referencing, and like this last one, so I'll preface this with, you know, you've indicated that salary is your top priority, right? And so clearly the impression that we have received is that you do not wish to split the money, that the $4 million to fund the parental leave program, you know, to take the money from that program to fund it and do the parental leave program. That being said, we're proposing current contract language because where we landed the last time, the feedback that we got the last time was that, you know, the what we had proposed in terms of the parameters associated with parental leave were not agreeable from y'all's perspective. So that being the case, if you know, this one in particular, if you are willing to take from the money that you have allocated for salary, then, you know, we, like we said at the beginning with, we propose that
until you know what a cost
parameters.
is, I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, you still haven't narrowed down. I think by years of experience of employees that took leave of absences, I know you said earlier that you can't calculate it. You can calculate it. You just look at their years of service in the district and you can find out whether or not they're even eligible with it. So you would know how many people did it. So it's not really 535,000. And then we can go ahead and figure out projections from there. But, you know, little things like that, I think, are the part that's also a little frustrating, that I think we asked for a number and we didn't get a number when we came to the table this time about what that cost was. And so it's hard to make decisions when you don't have the facts.
All right, move to the next note.
The next one is childcare, the 16.26 employee childcare. Once again, this is an area that because of the fiscal impact, this is one that we're saying we're putting our priority on the $4 million that we put on the table, and we're not able to push forward with this one. So we are recommending current contract language.
Get it?
No, so that was- All right, so next is the Shirley. So we can grab both 23 and the appendix B because we're back about this.
And rather than pass out the cheat sheet piece, if you don't mind emailing at the end of the bargaining session, so we know. Full list.
Sure. Yeah, I think as we were going, the purpose of this, I was going to give you a copy of it.
I
Because so that we could determine based on, you know, following your caucus, which items that you would like to include, you know, in the impasse hearing. Okay, right to the language. So.
Are you expecting an answer tonight?
Yes.
Okay, so you'd want an answer on the language tonight.
The one that is article. Where we going here?
You don't have
10
to,
is not
we
something
can continue, we
necessarily
can continue
address this evening.
to negotiate 10. If that's, if
Okay,
that's
so I
something,
mean, like,
if we could also decide to put it on the side burner and bring it back next year. You know, from our perspective, I think we've put a lot of work into getting a good format. So, you know, we'd like to try and continue to negotiate and hammer it out as we go forward. It's not, it doesn't seem to be a real point of contention or a real far apart. And it doesn't have a fiscal impact the way that the other issues do. And so that's one of the reasons why we really felt like we could continue to negotiate that piece. With regard to 23, Diana, have you passed that out? Okay. So basically, this is just, so we proposed last time that we met to codify the holiday from 6 to 8.
Right.
And so we didn't get a, I'm assuming that you guys will want to accept that, but I'm just looking for a formal answer on that piece. And then
So it's something already in practice that is going to get added to the contract.
correct,
Kind of like
it's codifying what's already in
paying the
practice.
people that are
But it was, I mean,
non-classroom teachers supply money that's not in the contract that could be added to the contract. It's just an example that they're two things that are very similar.
okay. If you remember, I mean, part of the reason why we decided to do that is because at this point in time, we're not able to agree to the work from home deal. And so it's a little bit of a trade-off as we work through the issues associated with getting that nailed down.
I was mentioning this teacher supply money.
Okay, well, yeah, but you said it's, okay, that's fine. So appendix B,
Back to the teacher supply though, in statute, it says SLPs, guidance counselors, it lists out a whole bunch of people in statute already.
I think social workers aren't included. There's a couple of folks that were within the bargaining unit that are excluded. But when you have like programs at schools that are like the incentive programs and you're supposed to have like pencils or, you know, those types of things for students and things, they're not being supplied in that way. And quite frankly, when you think about it, you know, the fact that teachers would have to buy their own school PBS items is really against contract, because if it's a school initiative and it's PBS, the school should be supplying all the materials that go along with that. So I don't know why some educators feel compelled to go ahead and purchase those things and why they aren't just provided at a school site. So just a side thing, thinking about like materials, resources, and what people are expected to purchase.
right. I would encourage you to bring this forward if you see those instances where it's occurring.
I think there's actually a couple of comments in the surveys that were shared that actually have those, so we'll go back and find out who those individuals are.
Okay. So really in appendix B, we're really just trying to clean up language in the first section here. You know, there's language that relates back to the 17-18 school year. And, you know, so we're looking to just take that out. The purpose of that section would be to establish what the supplemental base that we're working from is. And I think that as we change that in the future, that we would just, instead of leaving reference to previous years and all that, that we would just strike the number, put a new number and move forward for the sake of ease. Secondly, as in appendix B, section 2E, what we're looking to do is align this language with the changes that we've made below and with the stipulations that are already in contract, where we say, you know, a director will get between 12 and 15%, and a sponsor will get between 1 and 4%.
Brett, I appreciate it. We've already gone over those and we were in agreement with it. Our counter was dealing with the other language and the elementary part. So
Okay.
I guess in terms of those things, you're not going to increase the 4% for elementary, and you still want to keep.
No, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
So we haven't even really considered that as part of the proposal here. We can come back and address that. This was related because this was our proposal, bringing it back from the last time. And so what we were doing is basically, sticking with those same, the increases in the current supplemental amounts. We have, to be clear, going back to what you're saying, you guys have provided the counter to us today. We didn't have that going into this, so we can definitely talk about it. We can talk about it at our office and probably give you an answer related to that as well.
I gave it to you before the caucus, so I just still confused as to why
I understand.
there's not a
So-
response.
We don't have a response yet.
Okay.
So anyway, in terms of what we were looking to accomplish here, essentially, not a whole lot of changes to what we had proposed related to the individual supplements. We did add quite a few supplements, and we are willing to at least consider the additional 4% for elementary. I mean, to be honest with you, we added 16% right here with new supplements for elementary. So,
Because they
that's a
didn't have any
significant
really.
portion. Yeah. So I'm just saying this, it's not that we're not willing to consider this 100%.
We appreciate it.
So which one is he asking for?
So in their proposal, they wanted to change the overall academic sponsor.
It was the
number from
16 to the
16 to
20%. There was a part of the proposal that you mentioned.
Red.
But yeah,
That's it. And before it was 0,
before 16.
currently it's 16.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, currently 16.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
All right.
so we have an answer for you.
That's
We're
fine.
willing to accept the additional 20% as well. For elementary,
4%.
Moving it to 20.
moving it to 20.
But we'll take 20.
Yeah.
So 40.
Well, to be honest, it really is,
Gotta-
but so moving it to 4 to 20. And so that would be the end of our set of proposals for tonight.
Just to be clear, I know that it was the 16 to the 20 was one of the portions. The other part was the dangling language at the end in parentheses. Your counter is to still include those as established as specific sites in accordance with district student activities parameters and the as designated by district student activities directive.
I think that when we talked about that earlier, the point of that information is that it needs to be clear that the standards for the programs are set by the district. And so that's why that language is there.
So instead of. What's he talking?
Basically, right here where it says as designated by the district.
You say as approved. Right,
That's a
it's
good
not
place.
designated, but as approved by, I mean, because right now they're all submitted and then for approval.
Right, I mean, it goes through the whatever internal process anyway. It's just that,
But-
as trying to create the intent of the contract is that the contract can stand alone, that it addresses processes and procedures that go along with things and things that end up being outside the contract, then.
And so do we only have that language for the agriculture people?
For the
Or is it
agriculture
everywhere?
And for other performing
Of
arts
this
directors.
And, right, if it's not in here, but it's included in the, as they redo the manual, what, district wide, who qualifies and who doesn't.
I mean, that's the point is that.
Is that right?
The manual is used to determine, which programs receive the supplement, right? So they have to meet a certain standard
So you-
to receive a supplement at that school.
So you just don't want it in the contract, but as far as it being in the manual and not in the contract as designated by that person.
Right, and as we would continue to negotiate, then the manual would become part of the contract, because at the end
That's
of the day, what the expectations and the working conditions of someone that receives it.
Yeah.
you know, should be something that is mutually agreed upon, not be something that is so far one way or another way. I mean, I think we understand that there just needs to be an analysis of it, or how much time is spent on there to go ahead and say that, as we discussed last time, you know, steel pan in high school is going to as many different things as the steel pan in middle school, but you get 4% less. Why? Like, let's figure out exactly what the workloads are.
That's
and
fine.
go from there.
All right.
So,
So we're fine with removing the language then.
Yeah.
okay, thank you. All right, I know that you wanted to try and finalize some language and stuff, but I think in spirit of making sure that we have Chris to be able to take a look at Article 10 and go through all that information, the fact that we are still kind of doing some verbal gymnastics around, you know, splitting classes, not splitting classes. There may be some ways to go ahead and create language that's a little more amenable, that we prefer to go ahead and call it a night, go back, take a look at where we can go ahead and move a couple of things and maybe reword it, and then come back to the table to deal with the language portion.
Yeah, I mean,
That's fine.
we're certainly open to continuing to have negotiations sessions to try and resolve the overall issue.
Mhm.
You know, because I think that the intent is that we continue to work, if possible, to get to resolution. And, you know, where we stand on the money thing, you know, we've already indicated where we stand.
You
on
will
the money.
organize your way, we will organize our way around it, and we'll just move forward.
All right, so we're gonna get together again to talk about the rest of the language. I'll come back with, you know, we've set our part. I do have a question. There's 26 items in here. Are any of these ours or they're all theirs? All this, it's all theirs?
Except for 10.
And all the green ones, we've already agreed to. Right. Okay. All right, so y'all just figure out when we want to get together again and figure out the language piece.
And, you know, I appreciate your question. I think, the part that's a little off-putting is this perception that, maybe that, you know, there was like, look at all the green we gave and all that kind of thing in terms of language and stuff. And I think they're mutually agreed upon as issues that need to be addressed. And we found consensus on those things. Who brings it, who doesn't bring it, they're issues that the instructional bargaining is dealing with, and we're addressing those things. So to try to, all of this is one-sided kind of thing, I'm just I don't know if it was intended, but I took a hint from.
Okay.
So, but.
The proposals that you have regressed on, are you preparing to take those to impasse?
Yeah, if you guys want to take them to impasse, then we're going to impasse. We're proposing current contract.
Okay, so once again, just for clarification, the ones that you have regressed on, you're prepared to go to impasse for with?
Like the ones that you pulled.
The ones we withdrew.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you asked.
So you're saying the ones that we're going back, like the leave buyback program, where we said basically you guys came back and said, we don't accept your offer.
We
And
never
we
said
said
we don't accept, we
you
said we were
did.
going to look at it.
You have
We-
a counter proposal in which you
We
changed
countered.
all of the parameters, and we basically said at that point in time that we do not have the ability to agree to this at this point in time.
For point of clarity, we did not change all the parameters. What we did was change it so that it was accessible for the purpose that it was intended to.
No, I-
people.
I understand that you know, it's just talking about what actually happened, right? So there were changes to the parameters that are simply, you know, when we talk about, you know, there are certain things that make a deal either workable or not, and those are those things.
But I think when we use absolute terms like changed all the parameters, it gives a false sense of what was actually changed.
Okay, all right.
So I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We'll get there.